Living longer, living healthier, living better than ever before. Welcome to Mountain Pacific's Healthy Living for Life, a weekly series that gives you the information, education, and expert insight you need to become an active participant in today's ever-changing healthcare climate. Here now is today's program host.
You have cancer. 3 simple words with a huge impact. They can change the way you see life, how you live life, and perhaps even give you a new appreciation for life. So what's it like to live with cancer? What's it like to live with someone who has cancer? How is it diagnosed and treated? Are there resources available? Your answers here on Healthy Living for Life. I'm Janet Whitmoyer, your host. Stay tuned. Chelsea Rice joins us, who at the age of 35 was diagnosed with a rare form of bladder cancer. Thank you so much, Chelsea, for being with us and sharing your story.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So the first thing is, can you tell us about how you knew something was wrong?
Well, in early 2012, I started having UTI-like symptoms. So some bloating and some burning. And then shortly thereafter, I started seeing some drops of blood in the toilet. Oh. And I thought it was spotting, but it ended up that it was bleeding coming from my urethra.
Oh, gosh.
And it went on and on. I went to several doctor visits to try and address it through antibiotics. And it was in June when I finally thought, okay, this is worse than I thought it was.
So at that time, you did seek out assistance to get it diagnosed. What tests did you undergo to come up with the diagnosis?
I actually didn't have insurance at the time, and so I had to wait an additional 4 months to see somebody. I had a CT in October of that year, and my insurance finally kicked in, and that's when we learned that I had a tumor on my bladder. Immediately afterwards, I had a biopsy which revealed that it was squamous cell carcinoma of the bladder, a rare and aggressive and potentially fatal bladder cancer.
So when you were diagnosed, what were your treatment options and how did you choose which option that you were going to take to treat the cancer?
So I went back to Rochester to visit with a urologist at Mayo Clinic, and because there's no studies done on this particular kind of cancer, they based my treatment on the most aggressive treatment they would give for transitional cell carcinoma of the bladder, the other more common form of bladder cancer. And it was determined that I would do 12 rounds of chemo, that's approximately 4 months, and then undergo an 8-hour open surgery called a radical cystectomy. And
wow, that's a lot of treatment. How did you decide to go down that path?
You know, I didn't feel like I had options.
Okay.
I felt like I really had, the option that I had to go with was to submit to what this regimen that was decided for me was. I had considered, you know, eating healthier or not undergoing chemotherapy at all. But all in all, my research found that chemotherapy was one of the better forms of treatment in order for longer survival.
Okay. You mentioned earlier that you didn't have health insurance when you figured this out, and obviously this was quite an expensive adventure that you were on. What did you do, or what did you have to go through to get the bills paid for this type of treatment?
You know, as soon as I was denied insurance, for the urinalysis that I took in February of that year to determine if I had an infection or not. I kept my appeals in the air with my insurance company the entire time I went through chemotherapy, which was really, really hard. My family and friends back in Portland fundraised about $10,000 for me by throwing a big party. And my friends and family and community here in Helena raised an additional $40,000 so that I was able to at least put a down payment on my surgery if I needed to. Otherwise, we never had insurance, and so I applied for charity care through my hospitals.
And doing all of this while you're undergoing the treatment for the cancer.
Yep, and my caregiver was working full-time to make sure that we could at least get our basic needs met at home.
And speaking of caregivers, that's a really important point because we know cancer is very emotional for the person that's going through it, but it can also be a really difficult time for the folks that are taking care of those. And you do have a caregiver, but we know that that wasn't always easy for her as well. So can you share with us a little bit about the journey that she went through during your cancer treatment?
You know, my partner of 10 years was remarkable. She didn't cry, she never got angry or frustrated with me. Somehow she just sucked it all up and remained strong, and I called her my rock. And that was wonderful and helped me to really do better to survive. When we learned that I would survive, though, she had been compartmentalizing all this emotion around the fact that she really didn't think that I was going to make it. And at the end of that, she plummeted into a really deep depression as a result of trying to contain all that emotion. And so it was difficult for us on the back end, even though we survived. And we still continue to go through sometimes difficult things as a result of the impact, the emotional impact in particular of cancer treatment, and, you know, reworking your life on the other end of it as a survivor.
So you've come a long way in the journey. Would you say, have they told you your cancer is cured?
Nope, it's just no evidence of disease.
Okay, so with that resolution, what is your health like today?
You know, it's really good considering what I went through. I do have lymphedema from my navel down to my toes, which is a side effect of treatment, and it's a costly side effect. And I have to wear compression garments every day of my life, and I deal with swelling depending on my activity. And so, you know, my health is good. I'm really fortunate to have the strength that I do and the cognitive abilities that I still do.
And so now you have the support, though, with your caregiver, and also you have insurance.
I do.
Is that
Yes.
correct? So that's really good. So I also want to ask you a little bit about your work with the American Cancer Society.
Yeah.
What does that work mean to you in light of what you've gone through with your cancer diagnosis and treatment?
So I work for the Cancer Action Network, which is aligned with the American Cancer Society and is the nonprofit legislative lobbying arm of the American Cancer Society. And so my experience with cancer gives me the passion to do the work that I do at the state capitol and at the federal level to advocate for cancer patients and their families, because we often, as patients, cannot go and advocate for ourselves because we have far too much to take care of.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Chelsea, for sharing your story with us. My next guest comes from St. Peter's Oncology Services. We'll be right back after the break.